Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to share with you just a few of my favorite stories from the book by Neville Goddard called The Law and the Promise. Let's get into it. Neville writes, "Wouldst thou be in a dream and yet not sleep? Try to revise your day every night before falling asleep. Try to visualize clearly and enter into the revised scene, which would be the imaginal solution of your problem. The revised imaginal structure may have a great influence on others, but that is not your concern. The other, influenced in the following story, is profoundly grateful for that influence." LSE writes, "Last August, while on a blind date, I met the man I wanted to marry. This happens sometimes, and it happened to me. He was everything I had ever thought of as desirable in a husband. 2 days after this enchanted evening, it was necessary for me to change my place of residence because of my work. And that same week, the mutual friend who had introduced me to this man moved away from the city. I realized that the man I had met probably did not know of my new address, and frankly, I was not sure he knew my name. After your last lecture, I spoke to you of this situation. Although I had plenty of other dates, I could not forget this one man. Your lecture was based on revising our day, and after speaking to you, I determined to revise my day every day. Before going to sleep that night, I felt I was in a different bed, in my own home as a married woman, and not as a single working girl, sharing an apartment with 3 other girls. I twisted an imaginary wedding band on my imaginary left hand, saying over and over to myself, 'This is wonderful. I really am Mrs. J.E.' And I fell asleep in what was, a moment before, a waking dream. I repeated this imaginary scene for 1 month, night after night. The first week in October, he found me. On our second date, I knew my dreams were rightly placed. Your teaching tells us to live in the end of our desire until that desire becomes fact. So although I did not know how he felt towards me, I continued, night after night, living in the feeling of my dream realized. The results? In November, he proposed. In January, we announced our engagement. In the following May, we were married. The loveliest part of it all, however, is that I am happier than I ever dreamed possible, and I know in my heart he is too. Mrs. J.E. By using her imagination radically instead of conservatively, by building her world out of pure dreams of fancy rather than using images supplied by memory, she brought about the fulfillment of her dream. Common sense would have used images supplied by her memory, and thereby perpetuated the fact of lack in her life. Imagination created what she desired out of a dream of fancy. Everyone must live wholly on the level of imagination, and it must be consciously and deliberately undertaken." Now, of course, this is a marvelous use of the law. Take note that in this case, she did it night after night, visualizing, getting into the state akin to sleep, living in her wish fulfilled night after night for 1 month, okay? But it happened, it worked. So if you have doubts, if you're trying to manifest something and you think it should only take 1 time or maybe 3 days, as some people believe, although 3 days is symbolic. I will tell you, when he speaks of manifesting something in 3 days, it is a symbolic 3 days. The number 3 means completion. So be aware of that. It can happen, but in some cases, like this woman's, it took 1 month. But in the end, she fulfilled her desire in physicality. Here's another wonderful healing story that uses the art of revision to create a change. Neville writes, "The buried past usually lies deeper than our surface mind can plumb. Fortunately for this lady, she remembered and proved that the made past can also be unmade through revision. For 39 years, I had suffered from a weak back. The pain would increase and decrease, but would never leave completely. The condition had progressed to the point where I used medical treatment almost constantly. The doctor would put the hip right for the moment, but the pain simply would not go away. One night, I heard you speak of revision and wondered to myself if a condition of almost 40 years could be revised. I had remembered that at the age of 3 or 4 years, I had fallen backwards from a very high swing and had been quite ill at that time because of a serious hip injury. From that time on, I had never been completely free from pain and had paid many a dollar to alleviate the condition to no avail. This year, during the month of August, the pain had become more intense, and one night I decided to test myself and attempt to revise that ancient accident which had been the cause of so much distress and pain and costly medical fees most of my adult life. Many nights had passed before I could feel myself back to the age of childhood play, but I succeeded. One night I actually felt myself on that swing, feeling the rush of the wind as the swing rose higher and higher. As the swing slowed down, I jumped forward, landing solidly and easily on my feet. In the imaginal action, I ran to my mother and insisted that she come watch what I could do. I did it again, jumping down from the swing and landing safely on my 2 feet. I repeated this imaginal act over and over until I fell asleep in the doing of it. Within 2 days, the pain in my back and hip began to recede, and within 2 months, pain no longer existed for me. A condition that had plagued me for more than 39 years, that had cost a small fortune in attempted cure, was no more. L.H. It is to the pruning shears of revision that we owe our prime fruit. Man and his past are one continuous structure. This structure contains all of the past which has been conserved and still operates below the threshold of his senses to influence the present and the future of his life. This is an excellent demonstration of the truth that all time is now. That event that took place 40 years ago, she was able to use her imaginal act to revise it. She had to feel herself into the state of being that child on the swing. But when she finally got the hang of it, she was able to repeat it night after night. In a matter of 2 months, she had completely reversed that plaguing pain that had bothered her for over 40 years. What a lovely demonstration that all time is here now. All things are possible to change through the art of revision. Neville writes, "In my audience sat a man who, by his confession, was broke. He had read the book Awakened Imagination, but he suddenly realized he had done nothing with the use of his imagination to solve his financial problem. He decided he would try to imagine himself as the winner of the 5-10 pool at Caliente Racetrack. In his words, 'In this pool, one attempts to pick winners in the 5th through the 10th races. So this is what I did. In my imagination, I stood, sorting my tickets and feeling as I did so that I had each of the 6 winners. I enacted this scene over and over in my imagination until I actually felt goose pimples. Then I saw the cashier giving me a large sum of money, which I placed beneath my imaginary shirt. This was my entire imaginal drama, and for 3 weeks, night after night, I enacted this scene and fell asleep in the action. After 3 weeks, I traveled physically to the Caliente Racetrack, and on that day, every detail of my imaginative play was actually realized. The only change in the scene was that the cashier gave me a check for a total of $84,000 instead of currency. After my lecture the night this story was told, a man in the audience asked me if I thought it was possible for him to duplicate TK's experience. TK. I told him he must decide the circumstances of his imaginal scene himself, but that whatever scene he chose, he must create a drama he could make natural to himself and imagine the end intently with all the feeling he could muster. He must not labor for the means to the end, but live imaginatively in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. 1 month later, he showed me a check for $16,000, which he had won in another 5-10 pool at the same Caliente Racetrack the previous day. This man had a sequel to his most interesting duplication of TK's good fortune. His first win took care of his immediate financial difficulties, although he wanted more money for future family security. Also, more important to him, he wanted to prove that this had not been an accident. He reasoned that if his good luck could happen a second time in succession, the so-called law of percentages would give way to proof for him that his imaginal structures were actually producing this miraculous reality. And so he dared to put his imagination to a second test. He continues, "I wanted a sizable bank account, and this, to me, meant seeing a large balance on my bank statements. Therefore, in my imagination, I enacted a scene which took me into 2 banks. In each bank, I would see an appreciative smile meant for me from the bank manager as I walked into his establishment, and I would hear the teller's cordial greeting. I would ask to see my statement. In one bank, I saw a balance of $10,000. In the other bank, I saw a balance of $15,000. My imaginal scene did not end there. Immediately after seeing my bank balances, I would turn my attention to my horse racing system, which, through a progression of 10 steps, would bring my winnings to $11,533, with a starting capital of $200. I would divide the winnings into 12 piles on my desk. Counting the money in my imaginary hands, I would put $1,000 in each of the 11 piles, and the remaining $533 in the last pile. My imaginative accounting would amount to $36,533, including my bank balances. I enacted this entire imaginative scene each morning, afternoon, and night for less than 1 month, and on March 2nd, I went to the Caliente Racetrack again. I made out my tickets, but strangely enough, and not knowing why I did so, I duplicated 6 more tickets exactly like the 6 already made out, but in the 10th selection, I made a mistake and copied 2 tickets twice. As the winners came in, I held 2 of them, each paying $16,423.50. I also had 6 consolation tickets, each paying $656.80. The combined total amounted to $36,788. My imaginary accounting 1 month before had totaled $36,533. 2 points of interest most profound to me were that by seeming accident I had marked 2 winning tickets identically, and also that at the end of the 9th race, which was one of the major winners, the trainer attempted to scratch the horse, but the stewards denied the trainer's request. AJF. Now, I don't recommend that you become a gambling man just to make money, but this does show you that if you are specific in your imaginal act, you will get what you imagine. This man was consistent. He performed his imaginal acts, living in the end 3 times a day for 1 month, and he was able to net what in his time would now be equivalent to over $300,000. Make up your mind and be clear as to what you want, and fall in love with the scene so that you cannot help but think from the fulfillment of your desire, and it must come to pass. Here's one final story that I believe you will find useful. Neville writes, The lady in the following story so successfully felt the feeling of her wish fulfilled, she made her mood the character of the night, frozen in a delightful dream. Most of us read and love fairy stories, but we all know that stories of improbable riches and good fortune are for the delight of the very young. But are they? I want to tell you of something unbelievably wonderful that happened to me through the power of my imagination, and I am not young in years. We live in an age which believes in neither fable nor magic, and yet everything I could possibly want in my wildest daydreams was given to me by the simple use of what you teach. That imagining creates reality, and that feeling is the secret of imagining. At the time this wonderful thing happened to me, I was out of a job and had no family to fall back upon for support. I needed just about everything. To find a decent job, I needed a car to look for it. And though I had a car, it was so worn out it was ready to fall apart. I was behind in my rent. I had no proper clothes to seek a job. And today, it's no fun for a woman of 55 to apply for a job of any kind. My bank account was almost depleted and there was no friend to whom I could turn. But I had been attending your lectures for almost a year, and my desperation forced me to put my imagination to the test. Indeed, I had nothing to lose. It was natural for me, I suppose, to begin by imagining myself having everything I needed. But I needed so many things, and in such short order, that I found myself exhausted when I finally got through the list. And by that time, I was so nervous I could not sleep. One lecture night, I heard you tell of an artist who captured the feeling, or word as you called it, of "isn't it wonderful?" in his personal experience. I began to apply this idea to my case. Instead of thinking of and imagining every article I needed, I tried to capture the feeling that something wonderful was happening to me. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. I would say over and over to myself as I fell asleep, "Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me now." And as I fell asleep, I would feel the way I would expect to feel under such circumstances. I repeated that imaginary action and feeling for 2 months, night after night. And one day in early October, I met a casual friend I hadn't seen for months who informed me he was about to leave on a trip to New York. I had lived in New York many years ago, and we talked of the city a few moments and then parted. I completely forgot the incident. 1 month later to the day, this man called at my apartment and simply handed me a certified check in my name for $2,500. After I got over the initial shock of seeing my name on a check for so much money, the story that unfolded seemed to me like a dream. It concerned a friend I had not seen nor heard from in more than 25 years. This friend of my past, I now learned, had become extremely wealthy in those 25 years. Our mutual acquaintance who had brought the check to me had met him quite by accident during the trip to New York last month. During their conversation they spoke of me, and for reasons I was not to know, for to this day I have not heard from him personally and have never attempted to contact him, this old friend decided to share a portion of his great wealth with me. For the next 2 years, from the office of his attorney, I received monthly checks so generous in amount, they not only covered every necessary requirement of daily living, but left much over for all the lovely things of life. A car, clothes, a spacious apartment, and best of all, no need to earn my daily bread. This past month I received a letter and some legal papers to be signed which provide the continuation of this monthly income for the rest of my natural life. TK. If the fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. Sir Winston calls on us to act on the assumption that we already possess that which we sought, to assume a virtue if we have it not. Is this not the secret of miracles? Thus, the man with palsy was told to rise, to take up his bed and walk, to mentally act as if he were healed, and when the actions of his imagination corresponded with the actions which he would physically perform, were he healed, he was healed. There you have it. This last story is a wonderful demonstration of working up that feeling of having everything you desire instead of taking all the time out to imagine thing after thing if you're manifesting multiple things. Feeling is the secret to imagining. When you allow yourself to fall in love with the feeling of your wish fulfilled, that something wonderful, marvelous, miraculous is happening to you now, then it must happen in your world. For the world is a reflection of your state of consciousness, and if your state is one of wonder, then you will experience that wonder. Thank you for tuning in today to Storytime with The Law and the Promise. As always, thank you so much for watching. I love you all very much, and I will see you next time. Take care.